Good evening. Sir Cliff Richard said in a statement last night from Portugal, where he has a home, though not the one searched by police in Berkshire, that he was happy to cooperate with the police should they wish to speak to him over an allegation of sexual assault dating back almost 3 decades. He described the allegation as completely false. Sir Cliff also noted that somehow the press, the BBC in this case, had been alerted to the fact that his flat was going to be searched, thereby making the allegation very public indeed. No charges against Sir Cliff have yet been brought, and it's not the first time that someone being investigated for a crime has found themselves in the public eye before any element of guilt has been proved. We'll discuss whether there should be more protections for those alleged to have committed sex offences in a moment. But first, here's Jim Reid.
His face splashed all over the newspapers. Inside, pages of speculation on his private life, all about a man who hasn't been found guilty, hasn't been charged, hasn't even been arrested or questioned. A news helicopter hovered overhead yesterday as police arrived to search Sir Cliff Richard's flat in Berkshire. The singer is still in Portugal and wasn't told about the operation in advance. But BBC News reporters were clearly waiting for the detectives to turn up in unmarked police cars.
The one thing that we do know about Sir Cliff is that he's denied any wrongdoing, and he also says that it appears that the press knew what was happening before he did. I think he's quite right to be angry about that, and that is part of the problem, that people already now have got sort of 0% of the facts, but they'll have 100% of the opinions as to what's going on here.
So how did the media know about the search of Sir Cliff Richard's house? Guidelines from the Association of Chief Police Officers say, save in clearly identified circumstances, the names or identifying details of those who are arrested or suspected of a crime should not be released by police forces to the press. Such circumstances include a threat to life, the prevention or detection of a crime, or a matter of public interest and confidence. It's at the point of charge that the name should be released. There were 2 forces involved in this search. This morning, Thames Valley Police released a statement saying they did not speak to any media outlets prior to the warrant being executed. By late afternoon, the BBC's head of news gathering tweeted, "Lots of questions about the original source of the BBC News story on Cliff Richard. We won't say who, but it was not South Yorkshire Police, the second force involved." But then a separate statement from South Yorkshire Police. When a media outlet contacted us with information about an investigation, we took the decision to work with them in order to protect the integrity of that investigation.
There should always be good relationships between the police and the media. They shouldn't be cosy, but obviously both sides have something to gain, and in the end the public have something to gain. One of the problems in recent years, there has been something of a knee-jerk reaction by the police saying, oh, we mustn't talk to them, which is absolutely ridiculous.
Let's welcome tonight Cliff Richard. We're delighted to have
The investigation is now focused on an alleged assault on a boy under 16 at an event featuring the American evangelist Billy Graham in the mid-80s. Sir Cliff has called the allegation completely false, but once again the publicity around the search has triggered calls for anonymity to be extended to the accused in cases like this.
There will be people out there who say, you know, it's trial by media again. But the interesting factor of this particular situation with Cliff Richard, he's actually been named before he's even been arrested, which is really, really unusual. It's the first time in 25 years I've heard of this, so I was quite shocked indeed.
Other high-profile celebrities, from Michael Lavelle to Freddie Starr to Jim Davison, all were cleared of sex offences or had charges dropped. All were named and had their private lives splashed over the press. Though in other cases, like the prosecution of Rolf Harris, that publicity did lead to other victims coming forward and then a successful prosecution.
In my view, the main reason for not introducing anonymity for defendants is that these cases, once there has been a charge, do encourage complainants to come forward because they feel, well, it wasn't just me. And that's particularly relevant in cases where the defendant is in a position of authority or high profile, and we all know there are recent cases of this nature. And so they come forward and give their accounts before trial, sometimes during trial, and that evidence is often used.
Tonight, police said they have received information as the result of the media coverage of the last few days. This is, though, just the start of what could be a long process. Like anyone else, Sir Cliff Richard is innocent until proven guilty.
Jim Reid reporting. Well, to discuss how the law protects those involved in these cases and whether enough protection is there if the accused turns out to be innocent, we're joined by the former MP Anne Widdecombe and Jill Sayward, campaigner and rape victim herself. Jill, I'd like to start with you. I mean, it was the case, wasn't it, that up until a change in the Sexual Offences Act in 1988, defendants did have anonymity. So at your case in 1986, presumably you had no idea, nobody had any idea of the men who were accused of the rape.
I found out the main rapist's name the morning that I went to court. It was the first time I was allowed to be told. I'd asked at lower court levels and I was told I wasn't allowed to know. It was a horrendous experience because you have to come to terms with the fact that this is a real person. Suddenly this person who you've known about for months on end but know nothing about has a name and becomes a person. And when you're meant to be concentrating on the evidence that you're about to give, and it being the evidence in chief, having to think about everything to do with them and about them and learning their name, it's not the right time, it's not appropriate at all. It's just totally wrong to put that on victims in that situation.
So you wouldn't want to see a return to that, but just from what Jim was mentioning there in the report, I mean, the problems that a false allegation can cause some people is not to be ignored. Do you think there's any change in the law that would be beneficial?
I don't think that it's right to have publicised it before somebody's even been asked to, or being questioned. I don't believe that that is the right way ahead. But I think it's important from the moment somebody is questioned that we are made aware of the name of that person so that it can encourage other people to come forwards. There are so many people who have been convicted because other people have come forwards. Victims are very vulnerable and feel very much quite often that it was their fault that it happened. It's the wrong feeling, but you're led to believe by so many different people, so many different agencies, so many different people's perceptions that it was your fault in some way or other, and therefore you feel very guilty about actually making that move and going forwards and taking the step. So to know that other people out there have been through something similar makes it so much easier for you to feel that you will be believed.
And Widdecombe, this is the point, surely, isn't it? And it's one that's been made by the police, and particularly in the light of the Jimmy Savile case, that victims find strength in numbers. And so the naming and publicising of someone who has an accusation against them has led to other people feeling strong enough to come forward.
Yes, but the law has to protect the innocent as well as deal with the guilty. And from what we've seen in recent months, and this case now, I mean, takes it a whole stage further, but what we've seen in recent months is perfectly innocent people being named, other people coming forward, case being disproved, 19 charges in one celebrity case, just being completely disproved. But the people haven't been able to work while their names have been across the press. They've been subject to social disapproval. They're terribly anxious and worried, and it's not a level playing field because even when the charges are dismissed or the jury throws something out, we still don't know who brought the allegation.
Okay,
and I would say this for the level playing field. It's perfectly true that if somebody really is guilty, others may come forward. But it should also be the case that where a woman has previously made such allegations, that people should have the opportunity to know that. If that woman is not named, nobody will ever know.
You've made the suggestion that perhaps in those kind of cases, you know, a judge could make those false allegations known. But in the other cases that you're referring to, I mean, to take Jill's point as a victim of rape, I mean, why on earth would you want to not enable women to feel stronger about the ability to come forward, which is just, those are just the facts about some of these cases. You surely wouldn't want to take that away from people.
Well, I think, first of all, that's no reason whatever to start naming people before charge. You might want to do it on charge, but not before that, and that has been very widely disregarded. But secondly, I would say this, yes, I have said that I think that where a judge believes that an allegation has been malicious or frivolous or with pound signs in the eyes, he should then be able to name the accuser. But for those who simply, the evidence is not even strong enough to proceed to court, they've had months and months of worry.
Yeah.
There has to be a level playing field. My view would be either anonymity for both, I'm quite happy with that, or no anonymity for either. But
do
not
you think,
one side
thank you. Do you think, Jill, that there's a place, there's any place in the middle where these two differing opinions could meet?
I think it's very unlikely. I think one of the things that Anne was saying was that people should be able to be named if it's proved they've made a false allegation, and the law already allows that to happen. What we have to look at is the fact that for a lot of people, an allegation may not be seen as false. Somebody may be found not guilty, but that doesn't necessarily mean that the victim hasn't endured a sexual assault, and often a very nasty assault, and this can affect somebody again for the rest of their lives. We always talk about how it affects the offenders for the rest of their lives. Many of the people that we've seen, actually it hasn't affected them that badly because they've all gone back to their jobs. Yes, they may have had to suspend them, but that's true of victims as well, and quite often they have to suspend their lives full stop, and many of them will actually take their own lives, and we don't take that seriously. We do not take the impact on victims seriously at all in this country.
Jill, thank you very much indeed for coming in this evening, Jill Sayward, and thanks to Anne Widdicombe as well.